Hi, this is Ed Amoroso from Tag Cyber, and I'm here with a very special guest, a friend of mine, Doron Hendler, who's the CEO and co-founder of a cybersecurity company called TrackerDetect. We're going to be talking about his technology. I'm going to ask him a little bit about his background, and I think you're going to enjoy the conversation. So, Doron, it's very nice to see you. Thanks for making time.
Thank you very much, Ed, for hosting me. Thank you very much.
Hey, before we get started, why don't you take a minute and tell us a little bit about your company and what you guys do, and then we can dig into some of the details.
So Tracker Detect introduced Tracker IQ, which is a solution predominantly for detection and investigation of insider threats under insider programs and detection of operational breaches, which known as misuse, abuse, and malicious activity by authenticated users. Now, authenticated users can be any one of your internal employees in any enterprise, your customers, and any third party that are connected to your business through APIs. So each one of these users have legitimate credentials. They can come in, they can use the applications. And the big question is, how do you actually detect accurately and quickly operational breaches as misuse, abuse, or malicious activities? And that's what Tracker IQ does accurately. And most importantly, with no need to know the application in advance and no need to write any rules, no clients, no rules, fully AI, security analytics, state of the art.
Well, I'm guessing that you guys must be pretty busy because those are big problems today in enterprise business, virtually everywhere. Those are gigantic issues. Let me take you back. So, how did you get into this area, and tell me a little bit about how you guys decided to start the company?
So me personally, I was a victim to social engineering by mistake. A few years back, I was approached and by telephone calls by an agent that was asking me to help to advise him on different credentials on my account. And by mistake, I gave him my credentials, like my ID and one-time password, and I was a victim to that. And this bad guy or hacker basically probably went into the website to that insurance company and downloaded a lot of information. And I came to the insurance to my insurance company and said, guys, how did you couldn't detect that me was not that specific guy? He managed to get in to do different things, and the response was that there is no other way. If you have legitimate credentials and username or password or even one-time password, there is no actually way to detect that your behavior is very different than others or your normal behaviors within the applications. And I started investigating this, and I realized that the challenge of detections based on behavior profiles inside the application is a very, very, very challenging problem in the industry across multiple applications. And this is what drove me and our partners to come up with a very innovative solutions that deals with that specific issue.
It's funny you emphasize applications. I'm guessing around the time you're looking at that, businesses were starting. They know now that to realize that their applications might be the most important things they've got as assets. Is that what you're seeing? Do you hear that from customers, the importance of their apps?
So we definitely see more and more businesses telling us that what drives their business is the human resources and then applications. Business means applications. And the user for the applications is their human resources, customers, internal employees, partners. That's what drives their business. And today, there is no real visibility or very basic visibility in terms of who does what and how you can detect potential breaches in the application layer, in the business layer. And by the way, IBM in one of the recent researches identified that it takes more than 6 months to detect a breach like this because it's all manual and based on legacy rule-based systems. And that's why it takes so much time to detect such breaches, either by internal or external threats.
Now, when did you guys start the company, and where are you, and where are the customers typically?
So the company officially started as a bootstrap, and then we even managed to sponsor the company ourselves, and we almost got actually we got the first PO by ourselves, but then we were facing COVID, And this is where we did a U-turn and said, okay, let's do some kind of rounding and finding, and we started the company all beginning of 2021. And since then, we did fantastic because COVID actually made this problem even worse because all of a sudden people started to connect from everywhere, anytime. Rules had to be changed all the time continuously, and breaches happens all the time, and people working from remote, and that's basically made this issue even more significant because the first question everybody was asking, does all my employees are connected and can work properly? And the answer is yes. And then the question came mostly to CIO and CISOs. Do you see any abnormality in their work? Do you see anything different? And that was a question that came with no real answers. How can you detect something different of who does what among your sheer and variety of different applications? And more specifically around SaaS applications that you have so many and the digital transformation from on-prem to SaaS. It basically gives you so many different applications which are a click away. How can you detect misuse, abuse, or operational breaches in this variety of applications? You, that's the challenge that we were facing with TrackerIQ.
As you guys are working with customers, do you find in a large percentage of cases that the insider threat is the issue, or these threats come from both inside and outside? What's been your experience?
So I think obviously the three top concerns are the insider threats team, obviously, but also impersonations and intruders that trying to attack your SaaS attack surface. And now also we see that all your supply chain. So all the new applications, all your interfaces to third parties, enterprise to enterprise, business to business is based on APIs. So it's not about the vulnerability of the APIs. Is basically what do you do, what kind of exploitation you can do through those APIs that can expose your business. And I like to say even in the security space, that in the SaaS space, that it started like 2-3 years ago with CASB, that was very much focused on access, cloud access, security brokerage. And now in the recent year, it was about SSPM, SaaS security posture managements, configurations, and Tracker IQ presents the next thing, which is application detections. So how do you detect more about after authentications, after the access, after the configuration? How do you actually detect who does what in those applications? And that's what TrackerIQ is all about.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, guessing with most of your customers, they've got other cybersecurity systems that are deployed. You typically have to integrate or interact with others, so like the SIM and other types of systems that are involved. Is that a big part of, say, a deployment and how one of your customers would operate the platform?
So it's a very good question, Ed. And basically the answer has two folds. One, for SaaS application, basically with the SaaS applications, retrieve the logs by developing connectors directly to the vendors and to the SaaS vendors and downloading the logs and analyzing the logs. And for the custom build applications, yes, we have connections to different repositories like Splunk and Elastics and SIEMs. And wherever the logs are, we can do the integrations and retrieve the logs, or you can upload the logs into our S3 bucket and we can run the analytics. So yes, it's for the SaaS application, it's a very light, very easy onboarding, couple of minutes, and then you're up and running. And for the custom build application, it's a longer process, but also very light, very easy, and very straightforward.
Now, in the engine that you guys have built, tell me a little bit about the technology. Is it very complicated? I would imagine it's not that easy to pick up on these abnormalities. How does it work?
So predominantly today, the detection is based mainly around rule-based engines. And rules, everybody knows what the pitfalls of rules, that you have to invest, they are not accurate, generating very high number of false positives, require constant maintenance, and last, very, very difficult to scale. And we came with a security analytics, which is based on our internal development, which is patent protected, which is an unsupervised clustering engine that is able to read the logs, analyze the logs, and basically build multiple profile per user per applications. And if there's any deviations that happens from all of these learned profile that were learned for you as an individual or you as a group of users, like peer groups, we are able to identify and giving you, the analyst, the security analyst, tools to investigate quickly and get to the root cause analysis very, very accurately and very quickly. And this is something which is very unique because you don't have to develop rules, you don't have to develop models, you don't need to know the business logic. And I think also very importantly, every new attack today in the application layers is new. So how can you build something against things that you don't know of? How can you detect the unknowns? And that's what TrackerIQ is all about. We don't need to detect the unknowns, but we learn all of your profiles, all of your behaviors, the historical behaviors. And if we detect something new and sensitive, we flag it and you investigate that. And that's the power of TrackerIQ. Unsupervised, no rules, no clients.
You said something interesting there that I don't hear much, and that's this idea of multiple profiles per user. I think that sounds new. What is that? Was that driven by your engagements with clients, seeing that there would be these multiple threads per user?
So the industry have experienced the traditional UABA system, the user entity behavior analytics, which came up with different volumetric and frequency-based analysis that at the end came up with a kind of a baseline or norm line. But the downside of all of these UABA solutions that they were generating extremely very high number of false positives. And the signal to noise ratio was such that was not allowed you to detect the signals among this very high ratio. Now, the only way to get a good signal to noise ratio is by learning and defining automatically multiple profiles, because in the application you don't have one profile, you have multiple profiles. And if you have one profile, like one baseline, obviously that will generate very high number of false positives or alerts. And if you have hundreds, if not thousands of alerts per day, how can you detect the signals? So the only way to reduce these noises or this noise and come up with a very accurate model is by developing profiles per user. And that's exactly what we have done.
So looking forward, kind of take your crystal ball and think a few years out. Where is all this going? It seems like, just as an analyst, my observation is that in general, the application security threat has gotten much bigger the last 5 years. It just seems unmistakable. Do you think that will reverse? I know that's an area you obviously work in, but what do you think is going to happen in the next few years? I'm hoping you'll say things will get better, but I'm curious to hear what you think.
So I do think and I do see that the industry goes into passwordless direction. So at the end, it's not going to be based on identities and it's not going to be based on credentials. So it's going to be based on devices that you identify yourself, like the iPhones today, or the face recognitions, or the way that you log in into your device. But at the end, whatever I would say identity mechanism you will apply, everybody, I think, in the security industry agrees that you cannot provide 100% prevention. And it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And if we all agree to that statement, then the big question is, how can you get accurate and fast detection in the application space? But not only, I guess, in other layers in the security stack as well. But in the application, it's very, very painful because the movement to SaaS applications. And in a way, SaaS presents a hybrid model that you're responsible for the data and you're responsible for the detection and you're responsible to understand who does what. And the SaaS vendors provide you all of these logs, but you have to analyze and you have to investigate. And I see a bright future around detections. Also, the detection industry has not been disrupted with new technology or techniques in these last 3-4 years. Most of the scenes, most of the solution out there is still based on rule-based engines. So you have to define what you want to detect. And many of the security people goes back to the business and say, so tell us, what do you want us to define? What do you want us to look for? So it's like a crystal ball that knows everything, but you need to know what to ask in order for you to allow you to do detection. And we basically took a different approach. We don't ask you what you want to do. We are telling you these are the things which deviate from your multiple profiles or peer groups profiles, which are also sensitive, and you better investigate. So we spotlight the things that we think that worth to investigate, and we provide an extremely high accuracy in terms of detection, one or two alerts for a few days for very large financial enterprises globally today.
That makes good sense. Now, how should customers engage with you? You normally do a proof of concept when you're working. Is that the way? And I imagine they'd be in touch with you through your website for a POC. Is that the best approach?
So the best approach will obviously is through our websites. Contact us. We have different teams in different geos, and but website is definitely the right approach.
And POCs are pretty typical, I would imagine. They can
Yeah,
test.
you can do POC. It's very easy to do POC. Actually, we call it POVs, not POCs. It's proof of
Proof of
value.
value. That's a better, I should
We
say.
have, we have clients, customers already up in production. So the concept has been proved already a few years back, but now it's proof of value, and see if that's a value that means something to you as a prospect, and that's what we say proof of value.
I like that better than POC. That's great. Well, listen, I want to wish you nothing but the best in this area. This is so important. It's good for our industry that you guys are doing this. So keep up the good work. Keep selling customers. And on behalf of our team at Tag Cyber and for all the folks listening, I really want to thank you for spending some time with us, sharing with us about TrackerDetect and sharing a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much, Ed. I appreciate you hosting us here with you today.
Great to see you. And for everyone else watching, we'll see you all next time.